your mind tends to play tricks on you, and it's like, no, you're fine, when you are in fact not okay. You don't feel okay. This has just happened. And so again, we've mentioned it before, but it's worth repeating. Just I gave myself grace in those moments when I needed to cry and just process it. And I would speak to her I still do. I speak to her all the time. I speak to my sister all the time because they are experiencing life with you, even when you don't think it. When you're having a bad day, so are they, because they're there. You just can't see them.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives, in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Today, you'll be hearing Crystal Partney's story. Crystal is an author and speaker, as well as the founder of Scattering Hope and Owl and Thistle. Today, she will be sharing with us her grief journey after the passing of her sister to suicide. And we'll go into not all the details, but the details of her grief journey and what has come from that. So thank you, Crystal, for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the listeners for tuning in, and thank you for being here.
Oh, you're so very welcome. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. So we'll start with the things I normally just ask my guests, just to get to know you a little more and just kind of just relax. So where do you live and your family dynamics, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I live in a town called Spanish Fork, Utah, and I'm a wife, I'm a mother to a beautiful 5-year-old little girl and named Ava. And we have a dog named Misha, and she's actually the same age as Ava. So that's fun to have them grow up together. And it's just a little bit about me.
Great. Now I have a dog as well, but mine's 4.5. Her name's Evie. She's right there. She knows she's not going on a walk today because it's raining, and so she's just like chilling. And when she sees me sit here, she knows that it's
She knows
podcast
it's
time.
game time. She's like, oh, okay.
She's like, okay, I guess no walk right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll just lay here. So where is Spanish Fork? My parents used to live in Salt Lake. So where is it
Oh,
in relation to Salt Lake?
so it's about an hour south of Salt Lake.
Oh, is Zion?
It's about,
Is it on the way towards is Zion south of Salt Lake too?
yes, yes,
So it would be on the way to
yes,
Zion or
exactly. Yep.
St. George. No, what's it? Something
Yeah,
St.
yeah,
George.
St. George. Yes.
Oh, I'm right. Ooh.
Yeah.
So around there.
Yeah. And well, not quite there. It's
Okay.
closer to Provo, if you're
Yes,
familiar with
yes. Yeah.
Provo. Yeah. It's
Okay.
about, I don't know, like 10 minutes away from Provo.
And you
So
grew up there?
yes. So I was born and raised in Provo, but then we moved when I was 8 to Spanish Fork. So I
Okay.
call Spanish Fork home.
That is your home. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, and so tell me then your family dynamics, your sister, how many siblings are you? And when I say are you, it includes her, of course, because you'll always have her. So you always
Right.
be one of,
Yes.
yeah.
I
So,
am the youngest of 8.
oh,
Yeah, I
wow.
come from a really big family.
So your sister's name, what is her name? Your
Her name
sister
is
who passed
Gina.
away? Gina. Gina was how much older than you?
Oh my goodness. So she was the third. She's the oldest girl in our family, and she's the third. So when she passed away, let's see. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm trying to do the math. There's a 10-year difference between us.
Oh, okay. You're
Yeah.
similar to my youngest sister and I were like 9.5, like it's 9 and a couple months, but I always say 10 years, but
Right.
it's like 9 and something.
Yeah.
So, and we're really, really close. So,
Yeah.
okay. So then tell us a little of the circumstances. Then how did you find out she had passed away? Um, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I was attending school at the time of when I got a call from my mom saying that she had passed away that morning, and I was completely shocked. And thankfully I was actually preparing to go to work that day, and I was in my car and I was just listening to a webinar, and as soon as my mom called, which is nothing unusual because I talk to my mom every day. And so I picked up the phone like normal, and I could just tell something was terribly wrong. I could just hear it in her voice before she even spoke. And she proceeded to tell me that my sister had taken her life that morning. And like I had just said, we were just completely devastated. I was in complete shock, as we all were as a family. And I'll never forget, like, driving. My parents' house sits back off the road, and
In the same
it,
town as you, same
yeah,
town.
and it's lined with these beautiful tall pine trees. And as I was coming down the road, and as I was driving down the lane and turning towards my parents' house, I'll never forget the image of the sheriff's car out in front of my parents' house. That will forever be like burned in my memory because I've never seen something like that, let alone knowing what came next. And so, yeah, we were just completely, just devastated as a family, trying to navigate this complexity of the situation and just mourn the loss of our sister, and from my mom, her daughter. And so,
It's yeah, and it's of when I've spoken to people that have had family members die to suicide, there's this other layer, right, that is added to that. It's the component of what I've sensed in the conversations. Like there's this added layer. Like, what if I could have done this? What if I, what if I would? Oh, when she said this, it's like all these like replaying of your life in the last, few weeks or then months or years even, like were there clues, were there it's like it goes into this record. And then of course then society's way of viewing suicide is like very different sometimes than something else. So it's like all these emotions are on top of the fact that you're already grieving the loss of your loved one, then you have all these society taboos and everything added to it. It's just so much, it's heavy. So my heart goes out to you and your family for experiencing this and the grief. And I know that grief is unique to everybody. And I'm sure with 8 siblings, you notice that each one of you or 7 of you grieved really differently, as well as your parents. So tell us then what was then. Oh, and well, something we forgot to share was this was the day before your birthday. Is that correct?
that, yeah, yes, that's correct.
So your birthday was the next day. She passed away then the day before your birthday. So how tell us a little bit about that week, and if you even remember, because it's sometimes like it's like it can be like a blur.
Yeah,
And how you all as a family honored her life, and this was in 2019.
correct.
Um, so tell us about that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like you were saying just a minute ago, if I've forgotten, and I'll never forget that
Mhm.
moment of that first birthday without my sister. And at that birthday, I'm just say it like it was, it sucked. And it was, it's something that I'll never forget because I just remember, blowing out the candles on my birthday cake and just thinking, okay, she's gone. And this is the first birthday without her. And just how hard and how just tender that moment really was for me. And the time my daughter had just turned 3. And so she was happy, in that regard to celebrate my birthday. And she was like, Mommy, can we have some cake? So she definitely helped keep that birthday as light as it possibly could in
Mhm.
that moment. And so I'm truly grateful for that. And yeah, just as far as the dynamic of our family, and each of us processes our grief differently. And I told myself, I was, like I had just mentioned, I was literally in my senior year of college getting ready to graduate, and I had about a month left before I graduated. And so my priorities tended to shift after this, and I just said it didn't matter about the grades at that point. I mean, I was very grateful that I still maintained a high GPA, but still at that point it became irrelevant. I just said, Crystal, I would just need to graduate. That's all there is to it. And then I can begin the healing process, whatever that looks like, because I didn't know.
Mhm.
This was all new territory. I mean, I had experienced multiple losses in my life, especially in 2013. That year, I I had experienced multiple losses during that year. And so, but
Were they related to death losses in terms of deaths in
yes,
2013? Were they also family members or friends?
yes,
Family
yes,
members.
both,
Okay.
both
Right.
family and friend. And so, yeah, my best friend. And so it was with the loss of my sister, it was different, and as it should be, but it was a different experience altogether. It was something new. We had never experienced something like that as a family.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was very it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard.
Absolutely, as it should be. I mean, it's expected to be. But it's interesting because even though you had, the experience of grief, just what is it? I don't know my math. 6 years before, 2013. Um, it still was a different dynamic. The person that died in 2019, the dynamics of everything, especially the family dynamics, right? How
Yeah,
much they shift when one person is no longer there is a very unique. Um, yeah, It's different than when it's a friend or it's a relative, but that it's a relative that is not in that family
right. In that
unit.
inner, you call it the inner
Yes.
circle. Yeah,
Yes, it's definitely very different. It's not somebody that like in this case, with a sister, you probably talk often, the family gatherings, those kind of things. So everything starts shifting. So on that birthday, I was thinking, did you have a cake? Did you celebrate mainly for Ava because she knew that it was your birthday and she was excited?
I I told myself that, I wanted to celebrate the fact that it was my birthday. And I knew that it would never look the same. And so in my mind, and not only did I want to sell it, and not only did I want it to be for Ava too,
Mhm.
and to, have her celebrate with me, but I also wanted to say and think of my sister and say, okay, what would Gina wanted? She would have wanted me to go out and have a cake. And to be completely transparent, I don't remember presents, and at that point it didn't matter. It was just like I just had the cake, and having my little girl sing to me happy birthday was all that I wanted. And it wasn't, you know obviously what I really would have wanted wouldn't couldn't happen. And
Mm.
so, which was of course wanting my sister back. But Yeah, so it's a beautiful question, but I really feel I really felt at that time I'm gonna celebrate the fact that it's my birthday because
The
I
fact
know
that you're
that's what
alive,
she
and
would have wanted.
yeah, and the fact that it's the honoring the the preciousness of life, right? Even more in the frailty of it too. That why not honor this other year that you're alive and well, especially in the dichotomy with her having just passed away. Like it's that celebration of, you know, your life. And yeah, like you said, putting yourself into like what she would have wanted you to be feeling and so forth. That's beautiful. Now, talking about Ava, how did you explain to her as a 3-year-old that her Aunt Gina had how did she call her, by the way? How did she call her Aunt
She
Gina?
called her
Aunt
Aunt
Gina.
Gina.
Aunt
Yep.
Gina. That her Aunt Gina had passed away. Um, what kind of words did you use for her at that moment?
Yeah, to be honest, I struggled with wanting to tell her, and I was really just talking with my husband and saying, "Okay, do we tell her the truth?"
Mm,
Because to be quite frank, how do you tell a 3-year-old that her Aunt Gina had passed away, and especially of this magnitude? And so I I had a moment where I was like, okay, I needed to decide, and of course I was crying all throughout. And she came up to me. I was in the bathroom, and she came up to me. She says, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And I said, "Well," and so okay, I mustered up all the courage I could, and I had to tell her. So I just said, "Honey, I'm just really sad." And she's like, "Why are you sad?" And I said, "Well, your Aunt Gina has died." And she looks at me with these big eyes, and her innocence was so beautiful. She just said, "Mommy, why?"
mm,
And I just said, "Honey, I don't know why. I just know that Aunt Gina was really sad." And then she got a smile on her face. And I was like, "Okay, I just told you that your Aunt Gina had died. Now, why are you smiling?" And she got really quiet. And I asked her, I said, "Honey, why are you smiling?" And she goes, "Well, does that mean she's with Grandpa Lanny?" That's my dad.
oh, oh, so
That's my dad. And I said,
your dad has passed. Oh, so only your mom. Oh, that part I didn't know. Did your dad pass away in 2013? Oh,
and she goes, is that means she's with Grandpa Lanny? And I said, "Yeah, she's with Grandpa Lanny." And she goes, "Okay." And she runs out of the bathroom.
I got chills. I got
And
chills.
I just sat there for a moment. I was like, yes, that just happened. But it was so beautiful.
Uh,
It was like, to me, it was the biggest hug that I could possibly have, knowing that she was safe and that she was in good company.
mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's interesting because a lot of times those little things like that, like when my mom passed away, my sister died before my mom. And so when my mom passed away, my dad actually would say, and my dad listens to his podcast, so he'll hear it, but he would say, it's like, oh, it's like she gets to be with Zorana, like there was this aspect of course, my dad's sad, but it's like this
Yeah.
aspect of this longing, actually, even
Yeah.
that in that voice, like, wow, like now she gets to be with her daughter. My sister passed away 20 years before my mom. So,
Right.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
that, wow, she
It's
gets
just
to be
this
with her
beautiful
daughter.
reunion.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So that brought peace. And the fact that your 3-year-old reminded you of that and gave you that comfort with that uh, simplicity. And, sometimes I think we overcomplicate even that's just how we explain the fact you use the word that she died, and then she's the one that made the association that she's now with her grandpa. Like you didn't even say that, and
No.
she said that, and that's just beautiful. And that she thought of it with a smile, that she thought, "Oh, how beautiful," you know. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Now, how then did you all celebrate her life after her passing? What was the and I say celebrate memorial. I'm not sure what how was it how was her life celebrated or remembered?
Yeah. Um, well, we celebrated and remembered her all throughout that, especially as the months went on. But there were these little milestones. Her birthday, my sister's birthday, is in January, and so as we were approaching her birthday, I knew my sister loved Moose Tracks ice cream.
Oh, I
And
love
so
moose.
I
Ooh, you're
went to the
making me
store.
want some.
Yes, and so so I went to the store and I got it, and I remember looking at it like, I don't think this is it, but it was the only one they had, ironically enough. It was the only one they had. Literally the last
Pint or whatever.
glass
Yeah.
kind, and it was everything else was all of the other moose tracks in the different brands were gone. Like I was so surprised, but so I got the last one and I remember looking at it. I'm like, this looks so different. Well, what it was, they had swapped out it's vanilla with chocolate and peanut butter cups. Well, the kind that I got was chocolate with chocolate like swirls and peanut butter cups. So it was different, but anyways, I brought it home and we sang happy birthday to my sister. And my little girl goes, Mommy, can we have some of Aunt Gina's ice cream? And I go, Yes, yes, we can. So now, whenever we have it around my sister's birthday, she asks, Mommy, can I have some of Aunt Gina's ice cream? And so
Mm,
she knows that as Aunt
that,
Gina's ice cream. And it's just
that's
really
perfect.
sweet.
It's perfect. It's just so, yeah, it's simple. Again, just honoring her with like her favorite ice cream. And then, that's something that Ava will carry on as well. So did you
Oh, yeah.
celebrate her first birthday, just the three of you in your family unit on that
Yeah,
birthday?
yeah, we did. My mom, I don't know where she was at the time, but yeah, it was just us. It was just us three, and it was beautiful.
Memorable. Now, how was it then coming around then in March of 2020, then was her 1 year anniversary, what and your first birthday, no, second birthday, I guess, without her. So what were we already in quarantine when the okay. So tell
Ooh,
us a little bit about that.
yeah, we had actually here in Utah. It was it was so interesting because I was, as you said, this was the second birthday without my sister, and I normally don't celebrate, like go full out and do a party and all of that. It's usually very, very low key, and just my husband and family, and my some of my siblings come over. But that year, I just, as we were approaching the 1 year, I said, I'm gonna celebrate it. I know that I normally don't, but I want to do something really fun to not only celebrate my birthday but also to remember my sister. And so we went out to one of those escape rooms, and they're not cheap, but oh my goodness, it was worth every penny. And we were supposed to escape Camelot, and we didn't escape Camelot. We got stuck in Camelot, but only after the person running it was like, well, if you guys only had like 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, you guys would have escaped. I'm like, well then why didn't you give us 10 more minutes? There's not anybody here, that's going to come into the room. But that's, I digress. But
We're
it,
we're very much fans of escape rooms, very much. My kids are like full on like every time we go on vacation, they associate every time we go on vacation for us to look for an escape room because the first time we ever went to an escape room was in Hawaii, went in Maui when we were on vacation. So
oh
now
fun.
every time, yeah, so now every time we go somewhere, he's like, escape room. They're 13. Okay, they're almost 13 and 14. Okay, that's my kids, and they're still like escape room, escape. I'm like, oh my gosh. So then we end up having to find an escape room wherever we're like out skiing, and in Colorado, we had to find escape room for these children to
Oh, that's
like
so
now. Yeah,
fun though.
they
Oh,
related now. Yeah, they related now to our vacations just because
yeah.
of that one time. So so then you did the not escape from Camelot, and then
Our souls
trapped
are
it.
still stuck in Camelot.
And so it was the you guys and some of your siblings as well were there, or just
It was interesting because I we just invited a bunch of friends, and I of course I invited my siblings, but they were who knows? I can't remember what
Mhm.
they were doing, but they were all busy, and so we just kind of planned this kind of last minute thing, and so. But yeah, we had just a blast, and everybody in our group, all of our friends, they had never done it before either, and so we got done, and we were like, "Oh, this is dangerous. We could do this every week." It was so much fun.
It's so fun. Now, maybe that's just the way you celebrate every year your birthday now. Maybe that
Yeah,
that
and
could be like the tradition.
yeah, exactly. And so, ironically enough, we went to dinner afterwards, and we celebrated my birthday with the escape room. And then that Monday, so my birthday was on a Saturday, and then my on Monday, the whole world just shut down. And so it was sort of this beautiful moment where it was like, oh, okay. Now everything goes quiet, and we can you know adjust and pivot to that.
So yeah, so the that duality that then that's why you were actually celebrating maybe so big and grand because then just 2 days later you're quarantined. So had you not like thrown that big party for your birthday, maybe it would have felt like even weirder, going into the
Right.
quarantine. Yeah,
Exactly. Well, and we had no idea. I mean, obviously we didn't
right.
know that it would it would be so quickly. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like my husband came home from work that Friday, and we were texting each other all throughout the day, and he was like, school district's just closed. And he was just like, these little, like, like I said, the school district's just closed. This place like stopped. And so as we were going throughout the day, it was like, oh wow, like this is serious. Like, we didn't expect it. And so,
Mhm.
yes, we went and did this big party that we had already planned. And so, and then Monday it was like everything went
Everybody was quarantined.
went
Mhm.
silent. and
Mhm.
and it was I'm so glad that we actually did. And plus it was like we had just said, it was the 1 year anniversary the day before. And so, and again, I just wanted to really celebrate my sister and remember her in such a loving way. And I could think of no better thing than to go out and go to an escape room and do something fun that I had never done before.
That's wonderful. I love that. I love that. It's everybody, and everybody, again, like we say, everybody grieves different. Everybody honors their loved ones differently, as well as everybody's first birthday without their loved ones, or in your case, second. But I mean, really
Hmm.
kind of first slash because you're probably still in a fog the first time. But um also just does it differently. And I love that component of remembering that if your loved one were next, with you, they'd want to celebrate, right? So I'm glad that you did. So tell us, in that first year, what were some of your biggest tools to help you navigate this grief journey? And now that you've mentioned that in 2013 then your dad had passed away as well as your best friend, what tools did you use in 2013 as well? Because maybe some of those tools navigating grief then, did they play a part in your grief journey when your sister died?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So In 2013, I've coined that my year of hell because that's what it was. And for me, so in January of that year, my brother and his wife were getting ready to have their son, Will, and at 39 weeks gestation, he my sister-in-law was supposed to deliver him literally the next week, and he passed away. And they we all were just completely shocked. There were no signs of trauma inside the womb, and it was just something that just happened. And my as you can imagine, we were completely just heartbroken.
Mm.
And the one of the more tragic things, of course, too, was my sister-in-law still had to deliver. And so knowing the outcome. And so that happened in January of that year. And then my father passed away unexpectedly from health complications in April of that year. And then my best friend passed away in December of that same year from the same health complications as my dad. And so it, yeah, to say that I was like, holy cow, is an understatement. Like, I was just like, what just happened? And the the best tools looking back on that year particularly was there were so many things. And honestly, like, from April to December, I was mourning the loss of my dad. Unknowingly, I would lose my best friend in December of that year. So I always say, like, I had that little time to grieve and to process my dad's death.
Mhm.
And I did that with the help of my best friend too. And so we were able to, we lived in Colorado at the time of my dad's passing, and my nephew, but we moved back in August of that year. And so I was able to spend more time around my best friend. And then, like I said, unknowingly, she would pass that December. But she was the one that really, would call me up out of the blue and say, Crystal, we're going to a movie. And I, again, grief is so interesting because if for me it was like, no, my natural reaction was like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm just gonna stay at home. And it was like, no, Crystal, go, and you need a break. You need a break from the heaviness of this all of
Mhm.
all of this. There's been a lot of life transitions for you, and you just need to get out and to have that break, and to go have some fun. And so I did.
What's her name? What's your
Her
friend's name?
her name is Diane.
Diane. Mhm.
Yeah. And so in Diane, her personality was just like, let's go have fun. Like, that was her personality. It was, let's go have fun, let's go to the movies, let's go do parties. Like, that was her personality. And so I was like, okay, like, let's, she was just this just this bubbly personality. And so we went out and we would go to the movies. And I just remember, just sitting there after and coming home, I just was like, thanks, thank you, because I needed that break. So
Mhm.
that was one of the tools, unknowingly,
It was her
that,
friendship, her support and her friendship.
yeah, was just having that friend to just vent and just have someone that I could be vulnerable with and raw and really unfiltered. Because the family members and the friends that you have to be filtered with, and you can't say this. But yeah, with her, it was just easy. I didn't have to feel like I had to put on a show or a front.
Mhm.
Okay, sure.
So so Diane then was your biggest support then in that moment. And so now did you take some of the things that she basically taught you to do then during that grief journey of your dad's passing when she passed away in December? Like did you use some of the tools she would implement with you of the going out and also just expressing after her passing? And then who did you use then as your support? Who was it that you could just be completely raw and real when Diane died?
Oh my goodness, what a beautiful question. So, to your first question, yes, I absolutely took the things that she taught me forward and used it to process her death. And
Mhm.
just her life in general. She was, like I said, just a bubbly personality. And so yeah, I 100% was like, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, I'm gonna go to New Zealand, and I'm just gonna go, and I just started, working for the family business, and I'm like, I don't care, I'm gonna just go to New Zealand. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. He's like, honey, I love you. You can't do that. You can't do that just now. He's like, but he's like, I love your enthusiasm, but we just can't. So I was like, okay, well, I can go to the movies. He's like, okay, go do that. And he really became the person that I turned to for that support. And of course my mom too. And there were moments when I was lashing out, and my mom would lovingly say, honey, you're just trying to process Diane's loss.
Mm.
Okay. And so, and I was just like, yeah, you're right. And so I would give myself grace in those moments.
So important. So important, that aspect of giving yourself grace, because we can be judgmental of our own way of grieving too, right? Like we
Hmm.
end up judging ourselves whether we cry, whether we don't, whether like it's like we haven't gotten out of bed for weeks. We judge, you know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
like um we put that
We,
extra burden on ourselves
yeah. And it's true.
sometimes.
And, the old saying goes, is we're our own worst critic. Well, especially when we're grieving.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, especially because I think with grief, and this is one of the reasons of the podcast, is so that people can hear how different everybody's journeys are and stories, and how unique the journey is of grief to every individual. Um, it gives somebody that either is just fresh to this new journey and perspective that it is going to be unique, and therefore hopefully it will allow them to give themselves more grace and not be so judgmental of their own journey. So when Diane died, then you used then your husband for that support to be able to talk, your mom. So for you, the biggest tool has been then individuals to be able to talk to. Did you use any other tools, writing, music, dance? I don't know, any other way that you were able to kind of process and move the grief through you?
Yes, because like I had just said, literally had just started working for the family owned business, not not long after Diane had passed away. And so the biggest thing that I did was cry even when it wasn't pretty in the moment. And it, thankfully at that time I had worked in the upstairs office, so by myself for the first, oh golly, I don't remember exactly, but so I had that alone time before I had to then come downstairs and interact with customers and all of that. So I was very grateful because there were so many times when I would be listening to music and I would be thinking of Diane, and I would just be bawling. And I would be coming to work and I would just bawl. And so I really just honored that time and just allowed myself to cry, because up until that point, it, it's, and again, everybody's journey is so unique, but my natural tendency is to like kind of push it off and like, nope, I'm not going to process this emotion. This emotion sucks. So, no, I'm not going to process it. Like, we're just going to put it on the back burner. And I'm telling you, every time I do that, it comes back tenfold to bite me in the butt. And it's like, I wish I would have just done it then.
Mm-hmm.
But your mind tends to play tricks on you. And it's like, no, you're fine, when you are, in fact, not okay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel okay. This has just happened. And so, again, we've mentioned it before, but it's worth repeating. Just I gave myself grace in those moments when I needed to cry and just just process it. And I would speak to her all, I still do. I speak to her all the time. I speak to my sister all the time, because they are experiencing life with you even when you don't think it. When you're having a bad day, so are they, because they're there. You just can't see them. And I'll share this beautiful story as we wrap things up. But it was Christmas that year of 2013, and Diane loved Christmas. She loved Christmas, and her family would go all out. Like, they'd get the fresh tree, they'd get presents for each other. And because I come from a big family, my dad had this like understanding. It was like, y'all are getting money and you're welcome. Because there's 8 of you guys. So, yeah. So, Diane, because her family was so into Christmas, when she found out that all I would get is an envelope full of money, oh, darn, she was like completely floored. She was like, "Wait, Crystal, you don't have anything to unwrap at Christmas?" I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, we're stopping that. Like, I'm buying you a gift." And she did. She bought me a gift, and I don't remember what it was, but it really became my heart and soul to get this gift from her every single year. And so here it was, Christmas, and she had passed, and my dad had passed. And so there were a lot of just heaviness that year. And as we were celebrating this Christmas, and so I remember just getting so upset. And I remember yelling and screaming at them and being like, "You guys should be here right now.
Mm.
You should be here." And I don't mean to get emotional, but I immediately felt this peace come over me as they said, "Crystal, we're here.
Mm.
We are just not in the form that you want us to be right now."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You are here experiencing life with me, but you're just not in the form that I want you to be in. I want you to be here physically with me, but you're not.
Mm.
But make no mistake, they're there."
And it brings that aspect of faith brings so much comfort in the grief journey as well. It just doesn't it like that aspect of the fact that if we don't see it as a complete end for do you feel that for you
Oh, yeah,
because you don't see it as it
100%.
yeah
Like, how
it's one
tragic. That's the
yeah
even bigger tragedy, is to feel like that truly is the end. And I know in my soul and my spirit that that can't be the end. Because if that's the end, I mean, I can't think of a bigger tragedy than that. If I truly believe that that was the end, that I would never see them again. I mean, that truly is the real tragedy there, if I allow that to be the end.
Mhm.
And I believe that that's the end.
Mhm. Agreed. Agreed. And that connection and the talking, and I'm the same. And the fact that you were able to hear them say that we're here, that clarity, uh, for me would come in poems sometimes. Like one time I was driving, I was talking to my sister, and then afterwards I started writing a poem, talking to her as I'm like driving, and then in the poem, I'm writing it as I'm talking, she responds, but it's like, like it's like so within that, it was like this poem that's a conversation, but it's just coming, and I'm like, and I truly believe like it was that, and it's very similar to what you said. It was in Spanish, but it was basically, I was saying in the poem, I'm saying, I can in the sunset, I saw your face looking at me, your rate or whatever. And then afterwards it's like, um then she responds is like, you think I've abandoned you, and how mistaken you are. I'm with you, uh even when you're, sleeping, like all these like kind of things. I'm like, again, I'm paraphrasing my own poem because it's in Spanish, um but is that aspect of continuing being with me, like I was wrong to think that she was not,
Yeah.
so very similar there. So then with let's go into then talking, and then I know we're wrapping up soon, but it's like I still have so many questions. um I told you, like, my things with my interviews end up being long because I'm so curious. The Then when Gina died, then who was it? Did you also with your husband? Is that who you processed your grief with as well? Was with him, and then you continue. Then also, you said you talk with Gina as well now, and now tell us a little bit of that, of the grief journey then, and now the kit that you've developed, the journal, the handbook, the book, and all these other things. So lots of all piled up there, but for you to go ahead and speak.
Yes. Well, again, my mother has been just a tremendous support in that regard, and I forget that it's, because we're so close, that she lost a daughter, and how hard that must have been for her to find her daughter, and then to have to process that with one of her daughters. And so, hats go off to my mom for her bravery, and for her courage, and her example that she is to me, and not just to me, but to my siblings. Yeah. And of course, my husband has been tremendous. And then Ava, I have to give props to her because she will remind me of things that my sister had said. And I am just astounded at the things that she remembers even to this day. And she reminds me that she's not far, that Gina's right there, and that she's experiencing life with us. And and so those three people have really been a tremendous support in my life. And knowing sort of this journey that I was on, that is ultimately why my heart just really, spoke to me in that regard for the journal specifically that I created, because I know what it's like, especially during those first 30 days where everything feels like a blur and you don't know what day it is. And quite frankly, you don't even care what day it is. And that's okay. Like, that's
Mm,
all okay. But I really wanted, uh, in truth be told, I wanted to give someone a hug. And this was the best way that I could do that, is allow someone to feel like they're not alone in this space if they have lost a loved one to suicide, to have this journal be a starting point for them when they're ready. And even if it's been 6 months, even if it's been, on the 27th of the month, and they're like, oh, okay, I want to pick up Crystal's journal and go the next 30 days, do the things that she's talking about, and how I can use this as a way to process and begin that grieving process. And that was ultimately my heart behind it, because I know what that's like to feel like, oh my gosh, this just happened to me, and where do I begin? And society's telling me like I've got to quote unquote move on, and my heart's been completely shattered in a million pieces and then been given back to me, and society's telling me, now fix it.
Mm,
And
mm.
you're like, okay, well, excuse my language, but how in the hell do I do that? There's no roadmap. And so that, again, it goes back to my heart behind writing this journal in the first place. Was I wanted somebody to know that they're not alone, to feel that love, not just for me, Crystal, but even from their loved one. And I dare say even more so from their loved one, that they're right alongside you, and they're walking with you. And what a beautiful way to connect with them, and just allow yourself grace throughout that entire process.
That is beautiful. Now, this particular journal is specifically for people who've lost somebody to suicide, or can anybody pick it up and gather something from it?
Yes, I wrote it specifically for those that have lost a loved one to suicide, but there's definitely pieces in there that apply
To
to
anybody's.
loss and grief in general, because as grief is grief. And so allowing something like that to break it down into bite-sized manageable pieces on a day-to-day, that you can begin to feel like, okay, I don't know what next year's going to look like, but let's start with these first 30 days. Like, let's just
Hmm.
start today. And like I
Hmm.
said earlier, it doesn't matter if it's the 17th, it doesn't matter if it's the first day of the month. If you feel like you just need a refresher, you need a pick me up, please like use this journal as a way to start that healing process.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, and for offering that tool. And I'll put the link of where they can get it, as well as maybe by the time this podcast is released, your book is already available as well.
Yeah.
But all those links will be then in the show notes so that they can reach you. And then the best way to connect with you, would it be Instagram, Facebook? What's the best way for people to kind of reach you?
Yeah. So you can find more at scatteringhope.com or owlandthistle.com. And both of those will, I'll send the link over to you so you have them. And yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to Ava also for allowing mommy to chat while she would watch movies. We're saying she was watching Big Hero 6, and if anybody has children, that's a good one too, to kind of show a little bit of grief journey in that movie. There is certain elements of that as well, that it can help you kind of know that your loved one continues to be with you too. Big Hero, right? It has that dynamic. So thank you. Oh, there she is. Well, hello, Ava. Thank you. We're just wrapping up. We're wrapping up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Crystal.
Thanks.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.